the show, I'll, say, what have you been up to? Because I haven't talked to somebody in about a year or so. But in our case, we just spent New Year's over at our house, had a great party, and we kind of whooped it up a little bit, didn't we?
Yes, we did. I was responsible for distributing the party poppers and ensuring that they all discharged over your lovely dinner table.
We picked out Wilcox streamers for 3 days. So, yeah, it was a great party, man. And I kind of actually want to start with that little get-together with this conversation that we're going to have tonight because, as you know, as we had a pretty eclectic crowd of friends gathered for dinner, right? Some pretty powerful minds were there.
It was a freak show. It
was. It was great. And one of the subjects that went on for a long time was Antarctica. And I do want
loud.
Yeah, and
it got loud.
It did. So I want to start there because you've been writing about that, and you and I have been talking about it a lot over the last month, certainly. But since then, since New Year's, you've got a whole bunch of updated info. So I kind of want to start there, and then we'll wing it. We'll go freestyle after that. How's that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could talk about the new intel and not even get through all of it in all the time we have for the show.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of that too as well. So let's for the audience that may not know, over the last month and a half of 2016, a lot of strange events were unfolding down in Antarctica. Of course, we had Buzz Aldrin, we had Kerry on Election Day. We had officials from the Vatican are all winging it down there. What do you think that they were there to see?
Well, let's first of all frame the context of the discussion. You and I have talked about this WikiLeaks revelations about elite child sex trafficking and how disturbing that is, and we don't really want to talk about that in the air. I don't want to get into that.
Right.
But nonetheless, everybody has become aware of it. It was the number one trending search term in early December of last year. And this is a very, very serious problem for the elite because it is a rampant problem within their ranks. And in fact, there is a great deal of truth to the investigation. So I think everybody is now being presented with this. A lot of people maybe for the first time, and it strikes them as really shocking. And then the idea that this is happening is just so upsetting that they would rather act as if it's not true than really investigate it very deeply.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about all of that stuff, without going into it, even if some of it is not true and some of it is, that doesn't matter. What it does reveal is the power of the internet, and people will start to go and do their own research. And the network gets together and starts compiling, and then it is spoken about. And that is where the elite is certainly a little bit nervous because everything is now focused right back on them, and other details are going to come forward too.
So what happened is I wrote an article on my website, Divine Cosmos, after a long absence. I really did not want to get into the Trump versus Hillary thing. I had done a show with John B. Wells, actually, and I kind of was talking about politics, and that was the last public statement I'd made. So I really was I disappeared for like 2 or 3 months. And I just did not, because you know what? You talk about the election, and no matter which perspective you take, there's just this avalanche of hatred. Like, it was so incredibly contentious.
Yeah. You know what I chose to do is just to be equally vicious on both sides. That way I couldn't lose. Because you're absolutely right. It damaged families and friendships, and people probably lost jobs over saying one name or the other.
No question.
Yeah.
But here's a big problem, right? I already had been talking about for years other WikiLeaks that had said, where somebody is writing Hillary a letter and they're joking about sacrificing a chicken to Moloch.
Right.
What?
Right.
Nobody jokes about that.
Right.
And so she was very highly implicated in all these WikiLeaks revelations about this pizza stuff. And So clearly in the voting booth, you can't vote for that. And I think a lot of people just basically bowed out because it was like it was a choice between two unacceptable candidates.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There's no question.
In my personal world, for those who don't know this, as a result of having had a website online since 1999, my own website, back when it was very difficult to make them, and actually having published material online since 1996 in Richard C. Hoagland's forum is how I got started. I was an enormous coast-to-coast listener back in the day. That was the only show around. And so I was, on the edge of my seat every night listening to Coast and very much wanted to break into that scene, and I spent years and years trying before it actually worked. And, as a result of the first time I got on Coast was in 2001, and it was an enormous response. For me at the time, getting 400 emails of people I hadn't known before was huge.
Right.
And so I have had, as a result of being on Coast twice in 2 weeks, I got invited to Disclosure Project, which was in May 2001. And when I was there, I got to meet 39 different people who came forward and said that they had been involved in UFO-related top-secret projects for the government. And that stuff is now a legend, and even though it was 16 years ago, it's absolutely as fresh and relevant today as it ever was the day that it was done.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So I want people to be aware of the fact that there is a movie called Sirius that I'm in with Dr. Stephen Greer, and in that movie, it's openly acknowledged by Greer and everybody who made the movie that I was there at that event. So some people have said, oh, David is lying and David doesn't have any insiders. Well, wait a minute. We can prove that I was at this thing 15 years ago, almost 16 now, in which 39 insiders were present. I'd already been meeting insiders before that, and as a result of becoming steadily more exposed publicly since 2001, since I did that, I have had people approach me who actually are surprisingly high-ranking, surprisingly influential. People, I have at least 2 insiders who directly advised sitting presidents of the United States, directly worked with top people in all the major intelligence agencies, people that were involved in defense contractors, and there's a whole world that starts at 35 levels of secrecy above the president. And that's where it gets into what's called cosmic clearance, or the longer term would be cosmic top secret.
Right.
It's only once you get cosmic clearance that you begin to understand what's going on, that you begin to be let in. You're like now the Boy Scout, the amateur, And so the president is never given anything because they don't want, for example, if their crimes were ever found out about, and there was some kind of South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee or Nuremberg war crime trial, that kind of thing, last thing they want to do is have the president crying on the trial stand and sing like a songbird and say, oh, the government has been lying to you all about UFOs. They don't want that.
No, they can't have it.
So they're not going to ever let that happen. They
Right.
can't let somebody could kidnap the president, right? Somebody could torture the president. They don't want him to know anything because then he can't talk.
Well, the question constantly gets asked of me to turn around and ask you, or for me to answer for you, which is, where does David get his whistleblowers? How is this possible?
Well, I'm trying to build a foundation here, Jimmy, because I think it's very important that your listener be able to follow me on this journey without intrinsically assuming that I am somehow pulling this out as a hoax or a fable or some kind of
fantasy
attempt to just make myself look good.
Right.
I have had a very hard time doing this. I have had vastly, vastly more online hate directed towards me than what would take for 100 millennials to commit suicide.
Yeah, I don't know how you deal. I don't know how you deal with it. I deal with it on my own little small scale, and some of it we deal with together. But as you know, but you're at another level of that. And you have to have some very thick skin for sure.
I up until I think it was 2011 that I started to quarantine myself. But up until 2011, I had basically had 10 years of seeing at least 6 very, very venomously hateful comments directed to me personally every single day. No days off, no weekends, no holidays, for 10 years. And the most insanely outrageous, toxic, incredible hatred. And one of the things that I find so disconcerting is that I was often accused of having no proof to back up these claims. And so I would go into extensive, extraordinary depth of scientific rigor to such an extreme that my first book alone has well over 1,000 academic references. My second book has nearly 700. And my third book has another 300, 400. And yet people say, oh, David has no proof.
Yeah, it's not enough.
So,
well, it'll never be enough, David.
Yeah, and that's what I finally have come to is people are just going to make up stories and they're going to say whatever they want. And nothing that I do and no level of integrity that I try to preserve is ever going to change the voice of the negative. They're always going to say the same thing. And the two most, there's probably 3 most common arguments that I hear the most. Number one, David has a huge ego. Everybody wants to say that. And I don't really understand where that's coming from. I do think that because we're in such an embattled field here, that I may have in the past said some things that sounded like I was bragging or pumping myself up. But I think when we're all so embittered and we're getting bayoneted in the trenches by the enemy here, and we fight so many years to bring out the truth to people who don't even really seem to want it or care.
Right.
And we don't really see that much progress in the open world. And skeptics for year after year after year can say, David's been saying that we're going to get disclosure. David's been saying the government's going to tell us the truth. And it didn't happen, and it's not happening, and it's not going to happen. Blah, blah, blah. This thing goes on, and it doesn't appear that anything really changes. So I think part of why people have accused me of having a huge ego is that I'm extremely confident and I'm extremely outgoing and very fluent on stage, and they have this intrinsic belief that if you are saying something that's fringe, if you're saying something that doesn't agree with their belief system, that you're supposed to be really apologetic and kind of
right.
depressed,
and you're not. Let me jump in right there. We've got to take a break right here. Our guest tonight is David Wilcock, and when we come back, as promised, we will talk about Antarctica. Our guest, David Wilcock. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Coast to Coast AM. All right, welcome back. Man, love me some Genesis. All right, check out Beyond Belief, where you can join Coast to Coast AM's George Norrie for dynamic discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained. You can see the world through new eyes. You get new episodes weekly. You get unlimited access to Beyond Belief and watch anywhere on your computer, iPhone, iPad, whatever. No commercials, no sponsors. Enjoy Beyond Belief completely ad-free. Just go to beyondbelief.com. Our guest tonight, David Wilcock. Now, he's got some breaking stuff. It's about Antarctica. It's been, in our circles, the subject of conversation now for a couple of months. His new research, what he has found out, the breaking news after this short break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Coast. Sitting in for George Norrie tonight, I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and our guest is David Wilcock. Now, David, right before the break, we started to get into Antarctica, and I just want to back up and ask again, why all of the activity with Kerry and Buzz Aldrin and the Vatican? What's the interest? What have you been told?
Okay, so again, I see where you're going, and I want to do a couple more things before we get to answer that question. Because,
Okay, David, I get it.
Without the context it's useless. So the context is this. We have been dealing for 100 years with a hijacked financial system in which European elites had the American dollar outsourced to them with what's called the Federal Reserve System, as everybody knows. And we, Americans, basically said, we don't know enough to be able to run our own money system, so we're going to hand it over to these European billionaires, and they're going to be better able to handle it than we are because they're businessmen. They'll know how to invest it. Well, what's happened is that the value of the dollar has decreased by about 97% in those 100 years.
Right.
And it turns out, as everybody knows, that this money that they're printing is based on nothing. And because the U.S. dollar up until now is still what's called the global reserve currency, everyone else's value of their economy is based on the strength of the dollar or lack thereof. And they're slated based on their weight against the dollar. So the Federal Reserve can print as much dollars as it wants and doesn't have to be backed by anything, and they can effectively control who lives and who dies, who eats and who starves. So a very important part of this Antarctica discussion is to understand that no, contrary to what some conspiracy theorists want to assert, it is not a worldwide conspiracy. It is not something where they control all the governments, all the militaries, all the financial systems. That is not true. There are plenty of people in the world who are flaming pissed off at the Federal Reserve and at what we've been calling the cabal. Some people call it the New World Order, the Illuminati. The cabal is a more neutral term. It's less scary sounding.
Right.
So that's what we've been using.
Right.
So this international alliance got very strongly activated after 9/11 because, much like the Roswell crash clearly was not a weather balloon, 9/11, with buildings collapsing into their own footprint, is clearly not the result of Arabs with box cutters. And isn't it interesting that his passport just happens to land face up at the bottom of the Trade Center?
Yeah, still one of the great head scratchers of all time.
And why did it happen on the occult 2,000-year anniversary of the birth of Christ, as defined in a Bible code?
Right.
This was a very occult act, done with very precise timing for a goal, and the goal was, of course, this 5-inch tall stack of legal documents that was known as the USA Patriot Act, that was a blueprint for turning America into a fascist dictatorship and shredding the Constitution, which conveniently pops up just a couple weeks after 9/11. So a lot of people are aware of this. The problem is that the cabal has had a large degree of control over the press, and that includes television, movies, print media, etc.
Right.
So there has been an alliance working very quietly behind the scenes, and they have been working with ever-increasing effectiveness to try to bring down this corrupt global organization. Well, this has taken, it's really, really gotten into a very active phase in which the alliance is now stronger and more powerful than the cabal. And yet, the alliance is doing a cleanup operation in which most of the cabal will already have been completely defeated and completely wiped out before we ever hear a word about it. So one thing other that I need to say before we get into Antarctica, because this is all very important,
Sure,
is that if you study the history of banana republics, communist or fascist type dictatorship situations in which there is a coup and in which the existing regime is overthrown, you don't ever hear about the coup until it actually happens. The people that do the coup cannot say anything about it. They just do it.
right.
They do all the planning behind the scenes, and most of the work is done behind the scenes.
Yeah, yep.
And the other classic saying is, in order to kill the king, you need the assistance of the palace guards. And so what this means is, the equivalent of the palace guards in our time would be the military and the intelligence services. And so this is what's happening. The WikiLeaks exposures that turned into Pizzagate were the direct result of the palace guards. And Assange has already been saying, look, guys, it's not the Russians. It's the U.S. intelligence services. It came from within. They knew what was there. They didn't like it. They said, enough is enough. We're done. So the people in the cabal have been aware ever since 9/11 took place that they really, really badly botched it. It was meant to be a lot more effective. It was meant to be a lot more clean. So even though most people think 9/11 was a success for the cabal, there were many, many, many loose ends and unanswered questions that they had hoped to have neatly tied up, and it didn't work that way. Just like when they hoped to find chemical weapons in Iraq, they didn't find them, because actually the teams that were supposed to plant the fake weapons got fragged and were killed before they could actually put them in position. They had no idea where the fake stuff was located, so they couldn't actually find it.
Interesting.
And this is all stuff you hear when you start hanging out with the kind of insiders I know who literally were advisors to presidents. So what's happening now is that the cabal is absolutely out of time. The alliance is now more powerful than they are. And 9/11 was a botched job where they didn't get what they wanted. And they knew that it was only a matter of time before they were going to be exposed. So they have had a plan in the works as sort of like the final get-out-of-jail-free card that they've built for themselves, so that when the time comes that 9/11 truth goes mainstream, when the time comes that they cannot keep the doors closed on this thing, what could they do? Is there any possible way, once there's already war crimes tribunals, once the top bankers, or whatever you want to call them, the top industrialists, the top warmongers, once they're actually on trial, once they're actually in front of the world and accounting for their crimes, what can they whip out that might give them clemency, that might get them to be seen more favorably by the public?
Right, right. And so in this complex game that we're playing here, how many moves away are we from checkmate?
It's already over. It's raining in California, and
right.
That's a sign that it's over.
Right. That's funny, David. That's funny. But
I have been saying to people, everybody who knows me personally I've been saying ever since the drought really became a big thing 4 years ago, is when it really started to be talked about as a big thing.
Right.
I've been saying, look, why do actual meteorologists call this thing the ridiculously resilient ridge?
Yeah.
Why is there this high-pressure zone off the west coast of California over the ocean that absolutely positively never allows rain to hit our state?
Ever.
And anybody that says, oh, you know,
we get rain
in HARP and that it's the cabal,
right.
Oh, they just want to punish those California hippies. No. This is where all the food is grown.
That's right.
This is an attack against America itself.
That's right. That's right. I've been talking about this for a long time, and most people don't realize it. And if you are going to control something, you need to control the end, the beginning, the middle, the production, the distribution, and everything else. And it all stems right here in California. Most, they don't realize if they want fresh strawberries in December in Wisconsin, where do you think they're coming from?
Exactly.
So
what we're dealing with is European elites who feel that in their game of where they own both sides of a conflict and they play both sides against the middle, it's called the pincers movement in war.
Exactly.
They feel that America has never suffered enough in World War I, World War II, etc. So they feel now it's America's turn for the next big world war, or whatever we can get away with. We got to punish America. And that's what they were trying to do. They were literally trying to create mass starvation, mass chaos in America, cutting off the food supply through this action. And it got pretty dangerously close, but it never really worked. And what I've been calling the alliance, when we're saying the alliance, we're dealing now with a majority of all of the personnel in the intelligence services, of which there are, according to Steve Pachenik, there's 15, and Steve Pachenik's an important person we can talk about in a minute.
Right.
You're dealing with the top levels of the military. The majority of all these groups have now gone over to the alliance. They are not working for the cabal. In fact, the cabal is very much in the minority. There's been a huge anti-cabal revolution in Europe, in particular, even Great Britain. You know, a lot of people blame England for this, but the English government has largely now gone against the cabal. That's what the Brexit thing was all about. There's all kinds of stuff about elite pedophilia and criminality in the British press. They're really on it. Actually, more than we've been. America's been behind Britain in terms of how much they're taking on the cabal. Anyway, what's gone on is that we are now at a point in which the cabal has been exposed by WikiLeaks. And the WikiLeaks exposures were obviously done at the most politically useful time they could have been done, during an election. That's where everybody wants to be educated about politics so they can make an informed choice of their vote.
Right.
And then what happens is the cabal is actually now being wiped out. The factions that are refusing to surrender are mostly in underground facilities, and if they don't surrender, they are literally having Marines cutting their way in with blowtorches into these underground facilities that are locked up and garrisoned up. These guys are cutting their way in, and if the people that are inside do not surrender, then they are literally being wiped out. And by wiped out, I mean shot and killed. That's where we're at right now. There are multiple underground bases that are being cleaned out right as we speak. In fact, most of it's already done. The people that are running the cabal are already on the run. They're already trying to find their escape plans. Most of these people are not elected officials, and you would not know who they are if you saw them. So this is big, big, big stuff. And when we are at the point where Pizzagate is the number one most talked about subject on the Internet, in which there are so many videos that are so damning that even the fake stream media, that's a term I just came up with.
Yeah, nice.
In the last few days. The fake stream media that actually has the audacity to call anybody who's daring to write their own independent journalism and do their own research, oh, well, you're fake news. And then to marshal their monopoly over the Internet and over the press to actually block your news from distribution on the platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and Google, which includes Gmail, which means you're not even going to get the email from your friend that wants to send you this information.
Right, right.
It's totally unconstitutional. It's totally crazy.
How large is when we're dealing with Antarctica and we're talking about this underground situation? Does it go from east west, north south? Well, you're at the bottom of the pole, so I guess it would be south south or north north. But is it occupying and spread out all over the continent?
All right, so let me try to steer this back in because obviously we made promises and we can't set this thing up forever. The setup is very important, but I get what you're trying to do here. No,
it's just that you were talking about what the Marines were doing, and I'm just wondering if that was...
Some of these bases are in Antarctica, yeah. Some
right.
of the ones that are being penetrated are in Antarctica.
Right.
So what we need to understand here is that the lost continent of Atlantis, if you want to find it, you look at Antarctica. And what happened is the Earth went through a magnetic, or actually Earth crustal displacement, a pole shift. And what was Atlantis and was at one time subtropical, the Earth's position actually shifted, and the flood that we've all heard about as Noah's Ark, and also, it appears in so many other ancient mythologies around the world,
mm-hmm.
It started with a flood, but then it immediately quick froze, and it became the icy continent Antarctica. So this is why we see maps that were copied over from older maps in the Vatican that accurately depict what Antarctica looks like underneath the ice, which we didn't know until International Geophysical Year 1959, when they first used sonar to map out the land under the ice.
Right.
How the heck did these guys in the 1400s, 1500s know what it was going to look like?
Right.
Well, because it used to be inhabited.
Right. Well, and let me ask you this. With that pole shift, well, there's two possibilities here. We have continental drift, where Antarctica could have moved into the position that it's in, or the entire Earth, did a shift too as well, or it could have been a combination of both.
Sure, and I think it's important to understand here that we don't really understand the physics of why the Earth rotates on its axis. We don't even understand what the core of the Earth is. Now, the traditional interpretation of why the Earth is magnetic is, oh, well, it's got a core of iron. It turns out that if you go any more than 3 miles below the surface of the Earth, it already is so hot that the melting point of iron breaks down, and it would no longer have a magnetic field. So even the whole explanation that we have right now of the Earth's magnetic field is totally wrong. And now we got to get into plasma physics and the idea of a plasma that's very hot and can conduct magnetic energy.
Right.
So we don't know why the Earth rotates, but what we have heard from insiders and a variety of sources is that if you have a really bad nuclear exchange, a nuclear bomb goes off, that nuclear explosion is disruptive energetically enough that it can actually change the equilibrium of a planet's axis. And that's apparently what happened. If you read Plato's original account of the fall of Atlantis and the Timaeus and Critias, they were talking about how the area of Egypt had repelled an invasion from the Atlanteans. And it seemed like everybody was happy and everything was fine, and then all of a sudden they have this huge flood. So the part that you don't hear is that the Egyptians that, or whoever was in that region, which includes the original Aryans, which became Siberia after this happened, and then they migrated down into India and Iran and then on over into Europe eventually. But these peoples, after they'd repelled the invaders, they wanted to finish the war, and they dropped a nuke on them, or several nukes, and the Earth flipped on its axis.
All right, let's take a break right there. Our guest tonight, David Wilcock, talking Atlantis and Antarctica and what is going on down south. And we're going to get to the bottom of all of this. This is a Coast to Coast AM special event. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with David Wilcock after this short break. Man. Al Green. I got to tell you, I mean, that song makes you think of Pulp Fiction, doesn't it? It's got a whole new meaning. But the good news is everybody here in the Coast Studios gets to hear me sing like Al Green during the break. I do Al better than Al. I gotta say this really quick. I kid. Twitter is lit up tonight, and you can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And you can post your questions and comments right there. And I've got an entire pile of excellent questions right here in front of me from Twitter. So, and I'm going to get to all of them, I promise. Just follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio, and I'll see everything in real time. Are you a Coast Insider? Well, I'm a Coast Insider. And you can sign up to become a Coast Insider right now and listen to the show live, on demand. You can do it with your computer, mobile devices. All audio streams are delivered in high-quality, crystal-clear audio. Your benefits include, check this out, you get 5 years of audio archives, you get audio streaming, you get downloadable MP3s, you have media access through the website or the mobile app, you can chat with hosts and special guests, you've got an iTunes podcast, and you also get the cool thing, you get a direct email to George. All for just 15 cents a day. Just go to coasttocoastam.com. Our guest tonight, David Wilcock, one of the best, good friend of the show, full of knowledge, breaking news on Antarctica, next. Welcome back to Coast to Coast, filling in for George tonight. It is me, your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight is David Wilcock. And now, I do want to let everybody know, and especially to you, David, Twitter is completely on fire tonight. And on top of that, the phones, which we haven't opened up yet, have been jammed all night long. So we've got a lot of people interested in what's going down right now. And I've got a pile of questions off of Twitter. And I promise that I will get to those. So don't let me forget, okay? Are you with me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Back to where we were. Antarctica, the pole shift.
Maybe now I should start doing the electric David Wilcock tap dancing.
Yeah, right.
My informational download by about double or triple. I'm
trying
to talk more slowly so people can get into this before we really go crazy.
You want me to do it to music?
Whenever you want me,
Yeah, exactly. I knew you'd do it. Thank you, David. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we were just talking about the pole shift and what Antarctica used to be. That's where we left off.
And I want to point out here that I don't really know when this Antarctica was Atlantis idea came into vogue. It may be traceable back to somebody like Immanuel Velikovsky. I do know that the first time I encountered it was in Graham Hancock's legendary work, Fingerprints of the Gods, which I read soon after graduating college in 1995, and it just blew me away. Another book that kind of took that idea, and Graham Hancock, by the way, back in that book in 95, did have the pictures of the maps, which I'd seen in other books going back to the 70s, showing that these maps from the 1400s, 1500s actually showed what Antarctica looked like under the ice, even though it wasn't actually explored until the 1800s, and even after the mid-1800s is when they really started to get a sense of what it looked like.
Right.
So how did they have it on these maps? So it turns out that you got Graham Hancock writing about this in 1995, and another source, which is going to become very historic as this all unfolds in front of the public, was the work of Rand and Rose Flemath in a book called When the Sky Fell, which came out, I think, a few years after Graham Hancock, so I'm not sure about that. But I remember reading it in roughly 1998, somewhere around there. And their scholarship is truly incredible because they have comparative world mythology from all over the world about this epic flood. And they make a very compelling case that there is a worldwide memory of some type of catastrophic event. And if you track what Graham Hancock's been doing more recently, we see that there are actually traces of radioactive energy all over the planet in the form of iridium, suggesting that there was, in fact, a very sudden catastrophic event that did suddenly change sea levels in a very dramatic way very quickly.
That's right.
So this is no longer a question in which geologists can say, oh, this was a gradual change. No, the new scholarship is there was a very sudden, very dramatic, and very catastrophic change. And it is conceivable that the Earth's axial position could shift. Just because we haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it couldn't. So all of the pieces start to line up, but where it really is going to come into its fruition is archaeology. And when we get back into some of the stuff that the insiders will tell you, if you have what they call high friends in low places, that's where you start to find out that the Germans were aware of mythological links to Antarctica and the possibility of something being down there. And even before World War II, they were already using their U-boats, which are submarines, and going down there, and they found that there were caverns that are open to the sea, and you can literally sail right into these caverns and find these pockets underneath the ice in which there is land from the continental mass below the ice that's still visible. So they sail in there, they land on these land masses, and they walk around, and before too long, with their expeditionary teams, and of course they've got tanks and things like that, they can drive around, and they deploy soldiers and war materiel and everything, and what do they find? They find ruins of intelligently built structures in Antarctica. So this has been going on for a long time. This started in 1939. And the Germans actually built a base there that they call New Berlin. And that base still is in existence. So this is something that has a great deal of history behind it. And I have been speaking to insiders for many years who were aware of ruins being found in Antarctica. What's different, and where I come to you today, is that we now know for a fact that the cabal is planning to announce officially on an open level the discovery of ruins in Antarctica. And they're going to do this once they are already in the midst of war crimes tribunals in which they are being outed and their plans and their identities are being outed officially.
Is that so the focus would shift off of the trials and to Antarctica, through the media and public as well?
I think the idea would be if somebody has beaten his wife and he doesn't want to get a divorce, and he wants to maintain control of her, what's he going to do? He's going to go buy her a dozen roses and a box of chocolates.
Right.
Right?
Kobe did it.
You know, I went to college and I studied, I actually worked on a suicide hotline, and we studied domestic violence, and it's called grandiose gestures of affection, and all abusers tend to do this. So I think the equivalent of what we're seeing is they're hoping to start conversation around the water cooler at various people's offices that says, you know, we really need to be light on these guys because, yeah, they did a lot of wrong things and they covered things up, and some of their members were doing very evil stuff and were hurting kids, but not all of them. And you know what? Now they're being honest, and now they're telling us the truth. And wow, they've been hiding some amazing stuff. And oh my God, you know, where did these ruins come from, and who built them? And
well, that's the question. Let me ask you that directly, David, because Nick just asked this in Twitter, where he says, what's with the Nazi obsession that was going on with Antarctica? And with what is going on now, these ruins, are the cabal going to announce that as human or other?
Well, what we're hearing is that they are finding a great deal of giant humanoid bodies in the ice. There's a massive number of dead bodies that they're finding in the ice. But they are removing the ones that are the giants with the elongated skulls, and those giant skeletons were being found all the time in the 1800s on into the early 1900s, and then the whole thing basically got rubbed out of the media. So what we're actually dealing with down there is a series of ruins that were built by a group that crash-landed there approximately 55,000 years ago, and it was an extraterrestrial civilization that had originally lived on Mars and the planet they blew up that's now the asteroid belt, which was like Earth before it blew up. Some of them survived on the moon for many hundreds of thousands of years, because this original catastrophic event was 500,000 years ago.
Right.
Some of the survivors were on the moon. They got wiped out. And apparently what we're now hearing, as I try to integrate information now from 3 different main sources, actually 4, and these are all guys that don't necessarily agree with each other or even like each other, but they're all telling me the same stuff, which is totally amazing, because these are the very highest sources I have, and they're all saying the same thing. And what they're telling me is, if I put it all together, that there are 3 craft that have been found that are actual motherships under the ice in Antarctica, and this is going to be publicly announced in stages. These motherships are literally 30 miles wide. They're kind of oval-shaped. They're sort of circular, but they're oval-shaped, and they hold many, many craft inside of them. And there are 3 of them that were found, and they're jokingly calling them the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Interesting.
One of the 3 has been partially excavated. What they do is they take these big bags of water, plastic bags, they drop them down a chute that they're making, and as the bag gets to the bottom, they hit it with very intense microwaves. It instantaneously boils the water, and the steam melts more of the ice, like another 40 feet of ice. And so pretty quickly they can bore down through that 3-mile ice cap and get down to where this thing is.
Is that why, and this is again from Twitter from Roger, is that why Google is blurring things out? There's always, some white cloud in the way when you're starting to look at stuff in Antarctica.
There are probably going to be things in Antarctica that are anomalous. However, these ruins, these particular 3 motherships, which are not even the real motherships, they're only kind of like a small mothership compared to the size of what they did have.
Right.
But these are not something you're going to see on Google Earth no matter what.
That's right.
Took very advanced satellite telemetry using unconventional technology in order to find these.
Are there other countries involved in this, or right now is it just us?
Oh, look, this has been going on since 2002. There's a 14-year study of these ruins involving major university professors, and they have been documenting all of their research as they go for the last 14 years. And all of this stuff at some point is going to be brought forth publicly. These people are going to become huge celebrities, and anybody who was talking about this, like Graham Hancock or Randon Rose Flemass, they're going to become huge, huge public figures at that point because they will have been proven correct. And what I've been told is that we're actually getting authorization from the U.S. government, which is now basically in the control of the alliance. The cabal's on the losing side. We're now getting authorized to reveal this information. And there are a whole lot of things that are going to all come out at the same time, including the fact that apparently all, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to say this, but I got clearance to say this too. It started with something Fulford leaked. Benjamin Fulford leaked it on his blog, and I got independent confirmation from two other sources. All of the major U.S. military aircraft carriers have all been brought back to port, and they are all being restocked and re-outfitted, which can take 6 months of 24-hour-a-day work. They're being restocked and re-outfitted with all kinds of technology that they weren't going to tell us about for 100 years. And they're all being loaded up with it right now. And this includes 3 different types of drones that look kind of like the quadcopters, but they're full size. There's 3 different sizes of them, and each aircraft carrier is being equipped with dozens of these. And if you want to see what they look like, go watch Avatar or the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow, where the letters, it says live, die, repeat.
Right.
So they've been showing us this military hardware. Also, if you look at a movie like The Avengers, or if you look at a movie like Captain America, Winter Soldier, they got these floating aircraft carriers. Those are also apparently going to be released as official disclosure.
Well, to get ahead of the cabal, shouldn't the alliance release this Antarctica story first?
Well, that's what is happening. The alliance has asked us, and by us I mean myself, Corey Good. I'm actually not aware of anybody else publicly doing this yet who's actually getting briefings, but we're trying to do our part here to release this on behalf of the alliance so that the cabal does not control the narrative of how this is leaked. That's the big key, because they want to use it to try to further their control, to try to create controversy where people say, well, wait a minute, we can't punish these guys.
Right.
If they die, the secrets die with them. And I'm not even saying they should be killed, but I do think that they need to be prevented from continuing to create destructive influence.
Are there ETs associated with the cabal that are hiding in, like, unaware people or in between dimensions?
Hiding in unaware people?
Yes.
I don't believe in shape-shifting biological life. So the whole shape-shifting reptilian thing, no. All the best sources I have say that does not happen. There are beings that are essentially artificial that are made out of little robots called nanites, and those things can shape-shift into whatever they want. And they actually discovered this was a big problem in the 1970s in the White House. They had these things pooling down and looking like carpets and then reanimating themselves, and they could impersonate anybody in the White House. And so since the early 70s, they've had very sophisticated countermeasures that have prevented those types of beings from getting in.
Right, right.
But as far as actual biological life forms, we're all subject to the same basic laws. And in fact, no ETs that we've ever found have, depending on who you talk to, nobody has more than about a 4 to 12% discrepancy in the structure of their DNA from us. So throughout the cosmos, we're all pretty biologically similar.
Now, we're going to hit a break here, so I'll get this in, give you a chance to answer this. With the Draco and Antarctica, obviously, and their connection going back to World War II and the Nazis, is there going to be some Draco sightings or a disclosure when it comes to Antarctica as well?
Well, here's one of the interesting things. Both U.S. Marines and Canadian Marines have been taking out these underground bases, and they weren't necessarily on a need-to-know basis of what they were going to see. And so I've been hearing from my insiders that there's been some great shock in some of these Marines, because when they infiltrated these bases, they saw reptilian-looking humanoids fighting alongside regular humans like us, defending their home turf. And that was very traumatizing and shocking to many of these Marines when they saw this. So we do know that there have been, for the last approximately 375,000 years, there have been these predatory reptilian extraterrestrials in our solar system, and they did have a major outpost on Earth, and Antarctica was and still is their primary base of operation. However, our military-industrial complex now has parity with the reptilians in terms of the sophistication of their weaponry. And that has created a very decisive tipping point in the war, in which the reptilians are now being largely defeated. And, you know, you bring this up very spontaneously right before a break, and I've been trying to be very credible in how I do this. So I do just want to point out that one of our new guys is this World War II veteran, William Tompkins, who debriefed 29 different embedded spies in Nazi Germany. And they were shocked as they were bringing these stories back from the German space program, finding out that the Germans were in fact working with these extraterrestrials that had reptilian characteristics, which seems ridiculous.
Well, that's right. And we've got to take a network break right here. And so we'll pick up right there when we come back. Our guest tonight, David Wilcock. Stay with us. Man, you remember that video when it came out? Everybody sitting on the steps of the brownstone in like Harlem, right? Man, takes me back. Rolling Stones. All right, check out, I don't know if you know this, but the announcement was just made. George Norrie has got a new book coming out. It's called Mad as Hell. America's #1 all-night radio host takes on the dangerous world we live in. That's right. And it's available for pre-order right now on Amazon, so go check it out. It's going to be released on June 27th, 2017. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, not George Norrie. I'm sitting in for the good George tonight, and we're talking with David Wilcock, author, lecturer, researcher of ancient civilizations. And tonight we're talking about Antarctica and what may have been Atlantis. More with David right after this short break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Again, Twitter on fire. Wow. And I've got follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's all you got to do. Post your questions or comments right there. And David, this just came in right on target with the conversation that we're having. And Matthew says, if life elsewhere didn't really exist, then why does every federal agent see deny? Why do they deny it so hard? And that's exactly the point, isn't it?
Well, we're dealing with a long-term psychological operation in place to deny us the truth about UFOs for several different reasons. One of the reasons, of course, being that their propulsion systems would force the government to release technology that would eventually eliminate the need for fuel and eliminate the need for a money system. Because most of capitalism is based on energy as being the basic unit that is how wealth is evolved from. And so if energy no longer has to be paid for, then you've essentially destroyed the economy. And so like when Ralph Ring was building Otis Carr's version of the Tesla flying saucer,
right,
and they came in and shut him down, they said, you're threatening the entire economy of the United States. So I wanted to point out something about this event that we're telegraphing is going to happen. The people who listen to this show are in probably a minority of people who will be absolutely thrilled and overjoyed by this news.
How so?
Well, because you're going to be seeing films of these college professors that have been stationed in Antarctica since 2002, walking around amongst stone ruins and showing very advanced technological artifacts that they found that are greatly superior to anything we have now. And then those technologies are going to start to be disclosed and used in the public. Now, most of the people that would listen to this show are going to see this as a good thing, but I do want to point out something that the insiders have been telling me is one of the big concerns is that this will be seen as a mass trauma by many people. And it will be so upsetting because, remember, fear doesn't have information. Fear is a blind panic a lot of times. Fear comes in the absence of information. And so people are not going to have the time or the ability to necessarily do this research for themselves. They're going to suspect that it's a trick. They're going to be worried about, could this happen to us again? Could our society be washed under in tidal waves, and could we all be destroyed? They're going to be worried about aliens, which they never necessarily believed were true before. Even some people who thought they believed it didn't really, really believe it. So there's going to be all kinds of stuff like this that happens in which the effect could be like a 9/11 or even bigger. Even though some people are going to be very positive about it, other people are going to be really, really panicking. And so imagine what happens if you've got a very upsetting war crimes tribunal in which Pizzagate type of stuff is now public, and then this gets dropped on everybody at the same time. Wouldn't it have the effect of really distracting people from the tribunal?
Would it almost be like a pardon?
That's what they're hoping for.
Right.
They're also hoping, remember, how does the cabal do its magic best? They need a huge diversion, and they need everybody traumatized, and then they can make things happen very quickly, because traumatized people will bypass their normal ethics and their normal sense of right and wrong, and they'll want justice, and they'll also, make emotional decisions.
Well, wouldn't it be a combination of two things, though, David? And I know you and I have talked about this before, but I would love the audience to hear your answer. We would have the trauma. I would be traumatized, okay? So there would be the trauma, but then there's the other side at the same time with the same people where that question has been answered, right? And there is the relief that we're not alone. And we can move on now, and let's look at other things. Wouldn't it be a combination of both?
Yeah, I'm much more inclined towards what you just said, and I wouldn't have even pointed out the mass trauma part if it wasn't something that the highest levels of this are concerned about.
Right, it's a goal.
So also, and I want to redirect everybody back to the timeline of this, because I wrote my definitive Pizzagate investigation somewhere around December the 6th, I believe. And then I wrote the follow-up to it less than a week later. I think it was around December 11th or something.
It was when you were on my show, because right. You released it the day before and you called me. Right.
So Corey was getting information from his people in the military-industrial complex secret space program, which we've talked about in the article and so forth. I'm not going to redefine that right now, but
right.
They have flying black triangles and things like this. They told us, you guys need to run your asses off to get this stuff out there, because if you don't, you're going to be scooped, and it's going to appear that you're just copying something that has made it into these tabloid websites. So we worked like crazy, and I managed to get this thing posted on my website, a very comprehensive investigation. 2 hours later, tabloid websites started to talk about, for the very first time, cities under the ice in Antarctica. And what if we find cities? And then the day after I published the article, the UK Daily Express came out with a much more comprehensive article that talked about how conspiracy theorists are on fire because film footage from 2002 was found earlier this year from Antarctica discovering ruins down there, a group of college professors that have been missing since 2002. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm one of the grand poobahs of conspiracy theory. So are you, Jimmy.
Yep.
Nobody ever told us about anything like that.
That's right.
If it was out there, the alternative community would have torn it apart like a pack of hungry dogs.
Oh, check this out. Okay, we have 15 minutes before midnight, right, for you and I. We're still on Friday the 13th, right? Well, the first apocalyptic alarm of 2017 was being raised by conspiracy theorists around the world because today we had a trio of events all at the same time. We had the year's first full moon, Friday the 13th, and Venus being the brightest it's been in 8 years, right. And it was supposed to be doomsday today. Well, we've got 13 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Still okay.
Yeah, we're still here, brother.
So look, I'm very, very excited about this coming out. And Since I published Endgame 2, Corey Good has had other briefings that gave us more information than what we had in Endgame 2. I had never published these, and then the night before last night, I call Pete Peterson, and he was very aware of the group that had been recently contacting Corey since about last maybe February or March of last year. He was very aware of who they are and what they told him, and Pete and I start comparing notes of things that Corey had told me off the record, on the phone. Nobody's heard this ever. And Pete knew all the same stuff. But then it wasn't also exactly the same. There were things that Pete had heard that Corey hadn't heard, and vice versa. And that really was shocking to me. So for my own personal level of validation, this thing is unprecedented in my entire career history. I have never heard such a convergence of insider information on one subject. And everybody's going to want to know, well, when are they going to say this stuff? They're already doing it. If you go to the express.co.uk, which is a tabloid type of website, almost every day now they're coming out with some article about ruins in Antarctica. They're getting us ready. They have to start by doing it this way. And what the Alliance has said they want, and this is something I got through Pete, they want us talking about it this way first, before the stage of it being publicly announced.
Why?
Because it softens the blow. It kind of gets the people who are already inclined to believe this stuff more ready for it. It gives them time to process it, so that we in turn will be able to have educated ourselves and then help people process this who are not so ready for it and might be more prone to be traumatized. Because remember, the cabal would see that trauma as a very useful distraction.
Right,
so that they can no longer have to be on tribunals. Oh, well, in light of these astonishing events, we can't have these tribunals right now. Everybody needs to focus on the stunning, civilization-defining breakthrough that's as important as Jesus Christ,
Yeah, and what's interesting here, and I brought this up at the beginning of the show, is that why have the Vatican go down and Kerry and Buzz Aldrin? Those are three distinctly different groups of people to go down. Were they going down to see the same thing? Were they looking at different things? Or did they need a cross-reference, a cross-section of society to go down and see this disclosure at the same time?
I will give you some very brand new information right now.
Let's go.
Nobody's ever heard.
Let's go.
The reason why Buzz Aldrin had the problems that he did with his health was altitude sickness. Because he was brought on a craft that in 7 minutes brought him to a height of 200,000 miles, which means the backside of the moon. And apparently, in the course of those 7 minutes of altitude gain, he issued expletives 7 times in a row, and was absolutely shocked. And the shock apparently was what messed up his heart. And so he was in some kind of a flying black triangle type of craft that took off from Antarctica, in addition to him getting to see the ruins. He flew around the backside of the moon, and then on the way back in, he passed by a craft that is kind of like a circular sort of floating city that has, again, it's about a half mile wide, but then it projects a cloud that's about 5 miles wide in the sky, and it looks like a cloud from every angle, so you don't see this thing. It's cloaked from the surface of the Earth.
And he was wearing a T-shirt that said,
"Get your ass to Mars."
Get your ass to Mars. Can I say that on the air? Dan, did you just bleep me? Am I okay? I'm all right? Okay. Well, David said it first. Okay. There
and
you go.
Also, we were told that the craft that Buzz was in did something called a wing wave to the base as it went past.
And what about Kerry?
Well, Kerry went down there on Election Day. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, very.
And apparently one of the things that's happened is that the people who have been going down there are very excited because there are new ruins that, even for the people who know everything on the inside, that are at cosmic clearance and above, they're getting to see new stuff that they didn't know about before. So let's go back to these 3 motherships that supposedly crashed here about 55,000 years ago. This is the origin of the story of the fallen angels in the Bible. This is the story of Lucifer. These are the fallen angels. They were giants with elongated skulls. Their ships crashed here, and they deliberately crashed in what is now Antarctica because they knew there were very, very ancient ruins in that part of the Earth. And by very ancient, I mean potentially 2 billion years old or older. And that's a whole other thing I've talked about extensively in my book, The Ascension Mysteries, which I think is going to become a defining textbook for all this as this all goes public. And it's going to affect my life in ways that I'm not really looking forward to. But I certainly will accept, that role of helping to educate people. Anyway, they had to cannibalize their ships and use the material from their ships because they knew they weren't leaving. The ships were badly damaged. And so they used those ships to build their infrastructure. And one of the things they set up was a massive cloning program because they didn't have a very big population. So they cloned their own genetics with this long, spindly body and the elongated skull with human DNA from Earth. And they created different types of beings, some of which were giants, some of which were not, some of which had elongated skulls, some of which did not. And they built up a population this way. And so when we're looking at the true nature of the cabal as it exists today, the reason why they're so into royal bloodlines, the reason why they stay intermarried, how they manage to get control of the financial system, how they manage to have such an unfair advantage over the world, it's because these people were a lot more intelligent than everybody else here when they got here. And they did manage to infiltrate and take over world governments all over the planet. And they never really lost power, they just keep rebranding. So the Roman Empire seems to lose power, but they actually just migrated to Great Britain and rebranded as the British Empire. And these people are finally now on the verge of being exposed. So one of the things the Alliance really wants to do early in the game is identify these people, whereas the Cabal doesn't want the identity of these giants with elongated skulls ever to be known. That's one of their most guarded secrets. So it's certainly going to be a very interesting series of events in terms of how this goes down, what is said, and Jimmy, you are very aware, because you and I have been talking about this on a personal level, of the extraordinary hacker attacks that are being done against everyone in our field, you included.
That's right.
To try to make it utterly impossible for anybody who's going to YouTube to see our new stuff, because 20 to 50 new videos a day of our old stuff is being called new and uploaded as if it were new. So I encourage everybody who's listening to this show, if you find these fake videos that are not new but they're acting as if they're new, report them for abuse, because we are having a tremendous problem.
A tremendous one. I'll say this. I mean, I don't do any, grandiose self-promotion on Coast, but I will say this, that if you are going, there are 3 YouTube channels out there that handle all of this. That is David's, mine, and Corey's. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. And if there's anything else out there, if you are on another channel, you will know those 3 channels with, we have large amounts of subscribers and official marks and all of that. But there's only 3.
Right.
And
mine is David Wilcock 333. Corey's is Sphere Being Alliance, and yours is Fade to Black.
That's it. That's the end of the story right there. Anything else, and it's being allowed to propagate. Also, it is something that for us and the people that come to us for information, they're being misled down another path, and there's other things that are even darker than that are going on, and it also involves our websites too as well.
Yeah. I had somebody somehow manage to post a link to either a malware or a phishing site in my forums, and it is so difficult to track down that link that we have had to deactivate and take offline my entire forum, because with 10 years worth of data in it, right? 15 really.
Right.
Because we can't find this needle in a haystack, and if it's there, Google bans us from their entire search engine.
And it shows up that way. We've got to take a break right here. David, it's Friday night. Will you hang out with us, my friend, and take some phone calls?
Let me have it, buddy.
That's what I'm talking about. Our guest tonight, David Wilcock. It's Friday the 13th. We're going to open up the phone lines. Your calls are next. We'll be right back. Man, I love that song. Now, I just posted in Twitter, by the way. I said, okay, who knows who this is? I will say your name on the air. Now, I did that on Twitter a minute ago. Nobody has... really? Who knows who that is? Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But anyway, moving on. Paranormal Date. Finally, a dating and friendship site to meet others with similar interest. Find your match that shares an interest in not only the paranormal, but you've got science, life after death, and ghost stories, Bigfoot, UFOs, alternative medicine, and conspiracy theories. Paranormal Date now has almost 57,000 members. It's completely free to check out. You can do so right now with the promo code George. You're going to get a 40% discount. Paranormal Date is also available for iOS and Android apps. And when you're there, check out the companion site, conspiracydate.com. Tonight, our guest is David Wilcock. It's Friday. It's Friday the 13th. It's open lines with you and David. And yes, they are jammed. Get in now. Get in early. We'll be right back with your calls. All right. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm sitting in for George tonight. That's right. It's Friday the 13th. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. All right, David, you ready?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, let's do this. Let's go to one of our old friends, Old Faithful here. Let's go to Jeff from Culver City. Jeff, welcome to Coast.
Hey, hi, Jimmy, and hi, Mr. Wilcock. Happy New Year to both you guys.
Thanks,
yes, when it comes to this newly discovered fake news that's suddenly been in the headlines, it made me wonder why now is it just being revealed or discussed. And I believe that it has a lot to do with the clever, albeit clandestine, defeat of Hillary Clinton. You know, it amazes me that nobody could see any of this coming. You know, all of the researchers, all of the pundits, all of the university-educated scholars, et cetera. You know, yet fake news have been with us ever since the advent of the Internet and all its little subsidiaries like Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Reddit, Gawker, and all that other, mess, right? So anyone, anywhere can say anything on any of these mediums, and people who are utilizing these mediums will believe it as gospel. And it's ironic that I would use the word gospel because the older generation who did believe in whatever they did believe are dying off, and this newer generation who ironically are always saying, oh my God, OMG, don't even attend any religious type ceremonies or services or believe in anything but the Internet and fake news. My question is this, Mr. Wilcock, do you believe that fake news is a replacement for the organized religion that we all, grew up with or whatever? I'm in my late 40s or whatever, but, and this modern 21st century creation called the Internet, along with its minion subsidiaries, like I just mentioned earlier, is the new cult religion for the masses to make them believe in artificial intelligence or artificial technologies. And I'll take you on stop there.
Excellent question, Jeff, and Happy New Year to you, my friend. All right.
I think that the Internet is an opportunity for the freedom of communication. When I created my website in 1999, nobody was telling me what to do. Nobody was telling me to create propaganda. Nobody was telling me to attack organized religion. I had the freedom to write whatever I wanted. And if people hadn't have been interested in it, my career probably would have fizzled and I would have had to get a job. And that would have been the end of it. Oh,
you have a job now. I mean, how many hours sleep do you get a night? You work all day long. How many hours of sleep
do you
get?
I do segmented sleep, so I get probably a shift of like 3 or 4 hours, sometimes 5 or 6.
Right.
Rarely that much, but
right.
Then I stay awake for an hour or 2 hours, and then I go back to sleep, and then I'll get another shift of maybe anywhere between 1 and 3.
Right. That's it. Don't ever imply that you're not out there slaving. Let's go to Wild Card. Chris in Long Island, New York. Welcome to Coast. Say hi to David Wilcock.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Dave. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Chris.
Well, I had a question for David in terms of reading his new book, The Ascension Mysteries, which I'm very enjoying very much.
Thanks.
And one of the chapters was Nikola Tesla, the Pete Peterson and Nikola Tesla Black Ops.
Yep.
One of them is about Black Jesus, where there's a ascended being appearing in Africa.
Yep.
And I just want to know if you know any more information you would share with us, because I thought that was very captivating to me, and I just wanted more information on it.
Yeah, the Black
Thank you,
Jesus
Chris.
story. The Black Jesus story was probably one of the most shocking things I ever heard. It came from my insider, Jacob, I call him that in the book, who actually was working for the Rothschilds and still does, and also is a whistleblower who doesn't really do what they want but continues to work for them because he feels like there's some very serious extraterrestrial threats to Earth and that what they're doing is very necessary to protect us. So the story goes that in the 1960s there was a black man in Africa who came in with abilities complementary to those of Jesus. And he was performing miracles. He was starting to get people to listen to what he had to say. And the cabal tried to kill him, and, they could shoot him in the head, and his skull would just regenerate, and the flesh would grow back, and he was fine. And, so the crazy story that I heard, and remember, I was told at the time that if I disclosed this, that I would be killed, and I ended up putting it in the book anyway. But the story was that this guy, they finally said, okay, we're going to bring you to the United Nations and share your message with the world. Let's get you on this flight. They bring him on this flight, and instead of bringing him to the United Nations, they shot him repeatedly, and then actually had some kind of meat grinder device, and basically like a bandsaw, I guess, and sawed up his body into a whole bunch of pieces, put him in these very like radioactive shielded containers, and then had all these fighter jets dock with the plane and fly his body parts to all corners of the world, where then these containers turned them into ash. And they thought that maybe this would defeat him, like that his body somehow, the tissue was necessary. So if they destroyed all the tissue in all these places across the world, maybe they could defeat him. Well, he then regenerated in their offices and was fully fine, fully intact. But the sad part is that he said, you guys so badly do not want me to be here that I am not going to be able to do any more. You're going to get what you want, but bear in mind that in the future, many others like me will be coming, and when they do, you will not be able to stop us.
Wow. Wow.
Well, that is all I know. Unfortunately,
right.
There's nothing more to the story than that. I don't
Incredible.
but it is an incredible story.
Incredible. Let's go to Wild Card. Thomas, right here in California. Thomas, you're up next on Coast.
Jimmy, thank you for taking my call. And David, it's always a pleasure to hear your interviews. And I look forward to obtaining your latest book on the Ascension. David, my question is about direct contact with extraterrestrials. There have to be benevolent, trustworthy extraterrestrials out there. And how can the average man, the average woman of the coast-to-coast universe have direct contact with benevolent, trustworthy extraterrestrials without having to go through intermediaries like the Alliance or the Cabal or the military-industrial complex or national intelligence agencies or transnational corporations, but actual, direct, face-to-face, no intermediaries contact with benevolent, trustworthy extraterrestrials?
Got it.
Excellent question, Thomas.
So
David?
It's actually ironic that he asked this question because that is the big question that the reader of Ascension Mysteries is left with. And I am writing another book right now called Awakening in the Dream, Contact with the Divine, that is exactly that. It's exactly what his question is. So the short and sweet answer is that when you're dealing with the benevolent folks in the universe, they found that if they were to appear in front of people in person too quickly, that people would be worshipped by others as some kind of guru or savior figure, and that the people themselves would have ego problems that would develop where they would feel entitled or special or otherwise different.
Right.
So what usually happens in the case of ET contact, what I'm going to outline in my new book, and we're haggling over the release date right now. It may be August 2017, it may be September 2017, and it may be spring 2018, and that's not fixed yet. But it will be one of those three. So you will generally start having these experiences in dreams. And so I would highly, highly condition people to think that a dream might not just be a dream. One of the things I've heard from Corey Good is that people are having ET contacts, and then the dream will be partially what actually happened and partially a screen memory. It will be slightly distorted, or sometimes greatly distorted. So, but in the greater sense, I would say that we all have a higher self, and the higher self tries to communicate to us through mystery, and the mystery usually will start with things that most people would call coincidence and I would call synchronicity. So that's why I wrote a whole book called The Synchronicity Key, where I scientifically proved the existence of synchronicity as a bona fide fact. So you'll start to get these things happening that really defy common sense and logic, and that's your clue that invites you into the deeper mysteries. If you want to have the more profound types of spiritual experiences in direct contact with your higher self, I think dream work is a very highly useful discipline, but ultimately you're going to need to meditate. These beings will not be able to reach you, and they do start telepathically. They'll not be able to reach you telepathically if you don't get control over the monkey mind that's always chattering with all kinds of self-defeating and judgmental thoughts about others. And so when you can start to control that thought and get yourself into a nice, clear, coherent consciousness, that's where the criteria for contact will begin. And as we move forward through the changes that I'm now describing, people are going to start to have very dramatic experiences of contact that will appear to be like ghosts or entities in the room. And when that happens, we know that when that starts happening on a mass level, we know that we're very close to this solar event that I've talked about in the Ascension Mysteries book. That is a very, very interesting subject where the sun apparently is going to give off a big flash of energy, and after it does, what it means to be human will have fundamentally changed in a very dramatic way, almost instantaneously.
Yeah, we had a solar event and a flyby of a meteor yesterday. Both
that
in
is
the
true.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Let's go to Wild Card. Joe, way out east in the Bronx, New York. Joe, you're up next.
Hey, Jimmy, how's it going?
It's going good, Joe. Say hi to David.
Hey, David. How are you, David?
I'm doing good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you now, concerning the reptilians, is it their quest or their mission to try to gain control of major powers like the U.S. and Russia?
Yep. Do you want me to enunciate further on that, or do you have more to the question? Okay. All right, so what are the reptilians? There's been a lot of confusion around this. The reptilians are basically racists, and it's a group of beings that went around the galaxy seeing all these different human populations, and they found that there were certain... So basically, just as a starter point here, the biosphere that we see on Earth, the biome that we have, meaning plants, insects, marine life, animal life, birds, etc., mammals, this is very, very common on any inhabited Earth-like planet, and most of the Earth-like planets are inhabited. Life is very, very prolific. NASA has already publicly stated there's 40 billion with a B, 40 billion watery Earth-like planets just in our galaxy. That is official. It's in the Ascension Mysteries book. So, there are human populations on these planets, and this is because evolution ultimately is written into the laws of quantum physics. We're used to thinking of quantum physics as this very abstract stuff that only mathematicians can understand. when in fact it is actually a biological matrix that makes DNA and proteins and cells in life. So the types of organisms that we see in the animal kingdom here on Earth, there's all different ways that one of those types can become a human-looking being, and it depends on the climate and the conditions of that planet, and to some degree the actual consciousness of the planet and the sun as to which of these types of beings become sentient. So you could and do have planets that are entirely oceanic, where they don't have any continental mass above the surface of the oceans. And then you're going to have an aquatic species, and it could be any of a variety of types like we see in our oceans, that become humanoid and sentient, and they will have, limbs and heads with eyes, nose, mouth, ears, just like we have, or more or less similar. Then on planets where they do have land, you might have bird-like beings. You might have beings that look like they're kind of cat-like human or a dog-like human. And in some cases, you do have reptilians. It's not very common. So the reptilians, for whatever reason, maybe because of the heritage of the reptilian brain, they have tended to be more aggressive species. And so a very dominant, very intelligent, very reptilian group has found other natural reptilian stocks in our galaxy. They invaded these planets. They blended their DNA with the native population. So these populations now are hybrids. And they formed this confederation. They have been making war on non-reptilian species all over the galaxy, and they've been largely defeated and got beaten back into our little corner here. So they have an outpost in the constellation Orion, and they have an outpost here in our solar system, and those are their two main centers of operation.
Hey, Joe, I want to thank you for the phone call. We're going to head towards a break right here. Thank you so much. And, David, what do you say? Okay, I have two questions before the break. Let's get these in from me.
Okay.
A, what do you say to the people that insist that you are a disinfo agent, number one? And number two, what about your DNA? Two simple answers. Have you had your DNA checked? So let's get those in. You've got 2 minutes.
It's pretty odd. Why did I get a 179 when I took the IQ test? Why did they tell me I scored too high that they couldn't actually even tell me what my IQ was because it was off the chart? Why do I see things that other people don't see? And for me, it's like obvious and easy. And if I talk too fast, then people don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Why did it take me many years to learn how to dumb myself down enough that people could understand me? I don't know. I do think there's probably some kind of extraterrestrial aspect to my personality or my soul or whatever that is different from most people.
You look E.T.-ish.
I do kind of have an elongated skull.
Yeah, you got something going on. Okay.
And then as far as disinformation, when you're looking at the people who are doing this on behalf of the cabal,
right,
they're trying to promote a Luciferian belief system because that's the cabal's religion. I've been exposing it for many years.
Interesting.
And what that belief system entails is the exact opposite of what I keep telling people over and over again. Their belief is like Darwinian, the most effective killers are the most evolved. They're very hierarchical. They want to always put the power back in the hands of the cabal. They want to say might makes right. They want to encourage moral laxity. They want to encourage corrupt behavior, sexual looseness. And I have been just the opposite. I have been encouraging people to embrace the core of all the world's great spiritual teachings, which focuses on forgiveness, compassion, and helping other people.
Well, let's take a break right here, David. I don't want to cut you off. This is Coast to Coast AM. Our guest is David Wilcock, and we're going to keep doing phone calls because it's Friday the 13th. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. During the last break, I said, who is singing this song? And the winner was, I had to scroll back in Twitter, Aaron with Nico. These Days, written by Jackson Brown. I've got to share this with you. Check this out. The British government is moving ahead right now in a highly controversial plan to build a tunnel under Stonehenge. Some things you just can't make up. And they're trying to ease the traffic around the ancient monument. It's absolutely nuts. Now, this is where it gets crazy. It's costing $2.4 billion with a B. The project will see a major highway expansion that includes the construction of a nearly 2-mile-long stretch of road directly beneath those beautiful megalithic stones. Now, this is where I trip. What is underneath stone? What are we doing? Destroying what's underneath? We don't even know, right? Is somebody going to check this out, or are we just going to bore a tunnel underneath Stonehenge without checking it out? Read the full story right now in the news section over at coasttocoastam.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm sitting in for George Norrie tonight. It's Friday the 13th, and I've got David Wilcock right here taking your calls. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Coast AM, and David, I want to thank you for hanging out with us tonight. You've done a full 3 hours with us and an hour full of phone calls. So before we end this segment, I just want to say thank you from the Coast audience and from all of us here. And with that, let's try to do the best we can heading out here to end the third quarter. Let's go to Heather, east of the Rockies in Katy, Texas. Heather, you're up next.
Hi, David. This is Heather Sartain.
Hey, yeah, we just had 2 episodes of you on Gaia.
Oh, there you go. Hey, Heather, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. This show is keeping me awake tonight. I love the topic. My question about Antarctica is, what do you think of Admiral Richard Byrd's flight logs and the stories surrounding that?
Sure. You're talking about Operation High Jump, which is a historical case of immediate post-World War II era, 1947, where the Nazi scientists that had been brought over from Germany, probably under some pretty unpleasant interrogations, gave up information that the Nazis had this base in Antarctica. And the U.S. government sent a whole fleet of ships with full military armament. This is post-World War II, so they had all the buildup, and they didn't have any war to fight. So they sent a massive invasion force down there, and they were greeted by an incredible degree of resistance, including flying disc-shaped craft, which the term flying saucer wasn't even invented until that same year later on with the Kenneth Arnold sightings. But the term wasn't even known of yet, and they were very heavily attacked by these craft and actually limped home and were not able to gain any more information. So from that, there was disinformation that was planted out in the media, including the idea that they saw mastodons and primitive men and women, and that they were looking into the hollow earth. So that was a government-planted piece of disinformation to hide the truth, which was that they had, in fact, encountered these UFOs that greatly surprised them with attacks and caused a lot of damage.
There you go, Heather. Thank you so much. Have you had a good New Year?
Oh, yeah. It's been a really good year. I'm working a lot. I'm working on a book as well. It's like having 3 jobs.
Well, it is having 3 jobs, Heather. Let's not. Oh, man. Well, listen, have a great, safe rest of your 2017, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow, that was interesting. I didn't expect that. Neither did you, David. I'm sure we were both caught by surprise. Let's go to west of the Rockies, Colleen in Rockland, California. Colleen, you're up next.
Hi, Jimmy, and hi, David. You too. I'm your biggest fan out here, both of you. David, I live up here in Northern California, up above Sacramento, on the way up to Lake Tahoe, and we've had flood up here, as if you've paid attention, and it sounds like you have, to the weather up here. We've had so much rain, and I thought to myself during this deluge of the time that this is like it. I'm 65 years old. This is how it used to be.
Yep.
In the Bay Area all the time. You know, every winter we had tons of rain. And the drought, I always suspected, as you have talked about, that it was the chemtrails. Somebody was trying to control the agriculture here in California, the breadbasket of the world.
Yep.
And my question for you is this. Are we going to stop seeing chemtrails?
Well, you also spoke about the drought, so let's start with that first.
Okay.
I did get very high-level intel, again, authorized, and these are sources that are as high on Earth as it gets. The people that Pete are speaking to are at the very top of the command structure of the Alliance.
Uh-huh.
And we have heard that all of the rain that is coming into California is the result of 3 months of work now since the Alliance has gained control of these weather control technologies. And even though there is damage being done by the flooding, their determination is that they need to replenish our water table right now during the season that it's going to rain. And in fact, the latest statistics are, and this is even fake stream media saying this, 40% of California is now completely drought-free. And that's before any other storms hit us, and we still have a few months to go. So the drought's over, and that's amazing. Although I did not get any specific information saying this in so many words, since the chemtrails are both extraterrestrial in nature and cabal in nature, there's both types of negative groups doing this, and the fact that these groups have been neutralized, I do not expect that chemtrails are happening now, nor will they continue.
Thank you for the phone call, Colleen. That was excellent. And let's go to the first-time caller line, Jordana in San Diego. Jordana, you're up next.
Hi, Jimmy and David. I'm a really big fan, and I'm going to Joshua Tree. And Conrad DeFlon says hi to David.
Cool.
You remember him? UFO abductee.
Yep.
So I have a question and also an experience, recent. And the question is, I don't hear anything in the news necessarily about the Obama administration handing over the United States internet to Russia, China, and Iran October 1st, 2016, a month before the election. They don't mention anything like that. Do you have any insight on why this is not being mentioned?
Are you speaking about the lifting of the ICANN regulations where the U.S. was the head of the whole Internet hub? Yeah.
Yeah. Or Jordana, I'm going to say thank you for the phone call. I want to try to get a couple more in before the top of the hour, and we have to say bye to David. So thank you for the phone call and a great question. And have a great rest of your new year. David, ICANN and the United Nations and the Internet, I think that was one of the most craziest things of 2016.
I wouldn't get too caught up in nationalism at this point because what we're calling the cabal is a multinational group in which these three cities within countries, the Vatican City being their spiritual center, the City of London being their financial center, and Washington, D.C. being their military center.
Right.
Getting the Internet away from the hands of the U.S. was not a bad thing. It was actually instrumental in the defeat of the cabal because much of the alliance has been internationally based. And we are hearing that almost immediately after Trump's inauguration, we're going to start to get war crimes tribunals. And that gives me something to feel positively about with him winning. And I really look forward to that and hope that it will happen soon. And if it does, the cabal's final move is going to be to disclose Atlantis and Antarctica to try to distract everybody and hopefully get better treatment. But they're already in a triage situation. They're already on the run. A lot of them have already been defeated or surrendered. And there's also a great number of people who have already disclosed and have already had their testimonies filmed. And all those films will be played once this all comes out. This is probably going to be the most significant year in anybody's memory in recorded history, what we're about to see unfolding this year.
Let's try to get some more calls in here. Now, what's interesting, David, phones are completely jammed, and we've actually got a Skype call coming in because everything else is full. So I'm going to do this. Let's go to Klaus in Canada. on Skype. You're up next.
Hello. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, David. This has been a very exciting show tonight. I just had a question, and maybe I could share a dream with the world.
Well, Klaus, if you could, for me, please, because we're out of time, let's just have the question. Is that cool?
Yes. I was wondering if you could maybe just comment on Dr. Stephen Greer's work with CE5 and maybe France.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh,
that's a question for Mr. Wilcox.
Okay, Klaus, you're breaking up on the Skype line. I'm really sorry about that, my friend, but it was cutting in and out.
I can speak about the CE5 stuff. I think I get where he was going to go here. First of all, Dr. Greer has come out recently and made some speeches in which he has questioned the credibility of Corey Good's information, my information, William Tompkins. In fact, he actually called Good and Tompkins mind-controlled super soldiers. And his line of reasoning was that there are only benevolent ETs in the universe. Now, on a strictly academic level, as a scholar, every ancient teaching that we talk about on shows like Ancient Aliens, which I'm in almost all the episodes of, there's always good and bad ETs battling each other. So what he's doing is he's expressing an opinion statement, which I respect because it's based on the insiders that he has had contact with.
Right.
But from a wider academic perspective, it does not hold weight. And these insiders who I refer to have passed every test of validity that I have, which is basically a combination of what do the overall aggregate of insider testimonies say, and where's the thrust of that?
Well, and the same thing goes with there are good humans and bad humans.
Absolutely.
There's good dogs and bad dogs.
Absolutely.
Right? Good cats and bad cats. You know, you get two parakeets. You get two parakeets. One of them, tear your eyes out. I'm just saying.
And I want to point this out, Jimmy. Nobody knows this yet. I'm going to announce it right now. Believe it or not, Corey had a high-level hack against his own computer 2 nights ago, and it deleted all of the notes that were going to become our Endgame 3 article. And now he's on vacation, and he's not going to be writing during that time, so it's been left to me to disclose this. So given the attacks against him, the attacks against me, the very intense stuff that's going on, I've been telling everybody, please sign up on my website, dwilcock.com. That's dwilcock.com. And put in your email address there, and that makes sure that if I actually get taken offline for what I'm doing, which could happen, that I'll still be able to get in touch with everybody because I'll have your email address, and you get free books and free audio and all kinds of good extra gifts for doing that, and it doesn't cost anything. So as far as contacting extraterrestrials, which is the CE5 protocol, yes, that does work, and I would again say that meditating and trying to still your mind is going to be the best way to invite more of those experiences in.
That's exactly right, and I'm watching Twitter. Twitter is it's absolutely out of control right now. Now, we're at the end here. I want to say this. You're going to be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo. That's coming up February 10th through the 13th. Of course, I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. George Norrie's going to be there. Tommy's going to be there. I heard that Tommy's arriving in a very large stretch Hummer limousine. But anyway, it's one of the most exciting conferences in the country all year long, and it's kicking off conference season, of course, right here in Los Angeles at the LAX Hilton. What are you going to be speaking about this year?
Well, I held them off for a really long time on my conference descriptions, which of course had everybody on the edge of their seat, and I didn't actually send them in until mid-December. I am going to be talking about Antarctica. I am going to be talking about this intel, and I'm going to bring it right up to the bleeding edge of what I know. Pete Peterson is getting a huge briefing this weekend. It's going to have a lot more information than what I already know tonight as I'm talking. And he also tells me that they have handed him a 6-inch tall stack of briefing documents that he is supposed to hand to me, which I'm then going to be reading and then sharing with everybody out in the world. when the time is right. And I don't know how soon that is, but he already has the documents right now. So this is really heating up. What we're hearing about the timeline of when this is going to happen is that it's very imminent. And again, I've been burned many times in the past, but all the signs more than ever are saying this time it's real. We're already seeing a very dramatic end to the drought here in California. In fact, the reservoirs are overflowing and they're having to open the floodgates on them. The ground is completely saturated. That's a huge change for people here in California because we were watching everything just drying out and dying. And there are a lot of very tangible signs. Like if we publish an article saying that they're going to announce Antarctica is Atlantis, and then all of these articles start coming out immediately afterwards saying just that, I don't think that's because they're copying us. I think that's because our intel was accurate. And so I'm very, very excited about where this is all going.
Yeah, it is exciting times. And as you look forward to 2017, where I know you get this question all day long, and you get it from me too, and you're going to get it right now. Do you expect anything in 2017 of the disclosure variety and a large event?
Yeah, it appears that what we're going to get is a partial disclosure, and Corey and I have always said we do not want partial disclosure. We acknowledge that if everybody got the whole truth all at once, it would overwhelm them. But we do want full disclosure, but we want it to happen fairly quickly, not spaced out over 50 or 100 years,
right,
which is ludicrous. But even the partial disclosure scenario that we're now hearing has definitely been approved and is definitely going to roll forward. It will begin with these motherships. It will start with probably more primitive-looking ruins under the ice in Antarctica. Then we get the motherships. Then we find out that they have craft that can fly around our solar system. Then we find out that ships like the ones in Antarctica have also been found on Mars and other places in our solar system. And they just keep widening it and widening it like that.
But David, we're right at the top of the hour, man. You made it through 3 straight hours on Coast to Coast. Thank you so much, my friend, and we'll see you. We'll see you at Conscious Life Expo, February 10th at the LAX Hilton. You're the absolute very best. Thank you, David Wilcock. This is Coast to Coast. I'll be right back. David Bowie. Can you believe it? It's been a year since he passed away. Had to play that tonight. Had to. But does it seem like that? Does it seem that long to you, Dan? Tom, does it seem that long to you? It's crazy, isn't it? Anyway, I love David Bowie. All right. A normally routine flight. I'm going to use some bad language here, so if you have kids in the room. A normally routine flight by a Finnish airline raised eyebrows today due to an eerie combination of numbers and a final destination that would make even the most seasoned traveler nervous, including myself, which is this. It was Finnair Flight 666 on Friday the 13th that was headed for Helsinki, which boasts the baggage code HELL. That's right. Me, I'm catching the next flight out of town. Check out the full story right now over in the news at coasttocoastam.com for the full story. All right, I'm your host, Jimmy Church, sitting in on a Friday night for George Norrie. That means open lines, you and I in a doc studio next. All right, welcome back. I love Friday nights, open lines on Coast. And then you make it Friday the 13th, and it's extra special. So with that, let's go straight to wild card. Rick, out east in Florida. You're up next on Coast. Good evening, Rick. Good morning.
Howdy.
Howdy.
Now I believe in aliens.
So do I.
But there seems to be a disconnect.
How so, Rick?
To me, about the aliens that your previous guest was talking about to that one guy who was asking about reptilians.
Okay.
And he mentioned basically anthropomorphic aliens in the sense of we could recognize them, like point out cat features or dog features.
That's right.
But I just don't see how that could be.
Why? Why, Rick? Well, let me say this before you answer my why question, okay? The point that I make, not only with David, but everybody that I interview and every caller when stuff like this comes up, is this. We have to listen to everybody. That's what we have to do. None of us definitively has all of the answers. And anybody that says to me it's my way or the highway, I'm not there. I need open dialogue, and I need two-way communication, and I need all of the information on the table. And we need to listen to everybody. So David's just got his side of things. And so does Greer, and so does Wilcock, and so does Linda Moulton Howe, and Anna, Jason Martell, or whoever. We can go on down the list, right? Eric Von Daniken. So let's listen to everybody. That's all. And then one day we'll find out. You know what I mean? And that's it. So now I will say to you, why?
Well, it would be very coincidental for these kinds of features to show up on an alien life form thousands of light years away that has no relation whatsoever to us.
No, it has. Okay, Rick, and I hear you, right? That's a way to look at it. But fundamentally, everything from the stars to the shoes that you are wearing are all made out of the same stuff. The DNA here on planet Earth, we have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of species of everything, insects and monkeys and ducks and rats and humans. And a rat, a mouse, has 50% of your DNA, right? You are 50% mouse. And are you similar to? No, you're not. But we're all made from fundamentally the same stuff. And it's all carbon, and it's all sulfates, and it's all amino acids. It's all the basic things. So it doesn't matter. You know, there's a famous saying, right? We are stardust. Right? Okay, well, we are, my friend. We truly, everything is stardust. So don't forget, and gravity is going to cause and affect the same types of creatures, theoretically, all over the place. So you're going to have 4 feet, you're going to have 2 feet, you're going to have 2 hands, 4 hands, you're going to have 1 head, 2 eyes, stereo. You're going to have the same basic things because of the way the universe works. So whether it's reptilian here, look how many, a frog and a lizard are totally different, but they're the same. So how can we expect something different somewhere else in the universe? What would you expect to see? That doesn't mean that there isn't aliens that look like the Blob. Or, The Fog, which was a great movie, by the way. So I accept that, but everything is on the table when it comes to me. I listen to everybody, and then one day we'll find out, and I think you're going to see that they're very similar to us. That's my feeling.
That's a fair reasoning.
All right, Rick?
I respectfully disagree, but
That's exactly. That's what we need to do, is disagree. If you agreed with me, Rick, boring. That's boring, man. We've all got to disagree. We all have to have differences of opinion, and I respect that. I respect yours. All right? Hey, Rick. Rick.
It was good calling it.
Have a great, fantastic 2017, my friend. Great phone call. Let's go to another wild card. Let's go to Charles right here in Los Angeles, California. Charles, you're up next on Coast.
Good morning. To answer that fellow's question that just was on briefly, they have told. I've been in gatherings with these beings a number of times. The Galactic Federation came in here in 1996, preparing us for the changes to be made, And they can get here, for example, from the planet Sirius B, they can get here in approximately 7 minutes our time, they have told us.
What about Proxima B?
I beg your pardon?
What about Proxima B? That's even closer. That's the closest planet to Earth.
Well, the reason I said Sirius B is because a friend of mine has been to about 8 or 9 planets over the years.
Right.
Jesus of Nazareth was from Sirius B. A very beautiful planet, and they told us about 4 years ago they can get here in about 7 minutes.
Wow, 7 minutes. How do they do that? Do they cross the bulk? Are they traveling at the speed of gravity? How do they get here in 7 minutes?
I think they just basically almost spiritually wish it.
Right. That's interesting.
Somebody else was on Coast to Coast some months ago, and that was from another planet, and they said they can get here in about 7 minutes our time, approximately.
Yeah. It just depends if you're like at the speed of gravity, which is a crazy concept. But okay, so Charles, you called me. What's up?
For my question, it was for David, but maybe you can call him sometime and give us a report later on, and he would just have to give up an approximate guess anyway. So if you want to look into your crystal ball, my question was with him, with the changes that are coming, approximately when would he even guess that we would be rid of the Federal Reserve and the IRS? That was my question.
Oh, interesting. Okay. You know what? I'll ask him that personally, and I'll see what I can do by tomorrow night on the show.
Okay,
Fair
great.
enough?
That'd be great. Yeah, I'll be listening.
You got it, Charles, and have a great, safe 2017. All right, let's go to... Oh, he's been on hold for a long time. Let's go to Cornelius out east in Louisiana. Cornelius, welcome to Coast.
Hey, it's Mr. Jimmy Church. This is the first time I've talked to you. I'm the God, Guns, and Gold man, the Bible, Bullets, and Beans man. I'm telling everybody to get ready. George knows me, and Tommy, the great producer, Dan Heiser, knows me. So I've been a frequent caller. I've been with Art Bell. I had a question for Mr. Wilcox, too, but I believe in reading the Bible, and these aliens, you call them, they're fallen angels, and of course God has his angels, and what it is, and I believe that Mr. Wilcox has some things right and he has some things wrong, but the cabal and stuff, we've defeated them partly, but in the end, the test is going to be don't take the mark of the beast, and that's going to be that implant, that chip. And I'm glad you got people on Coast to Coast that say don't take the chip. Because that's how they're going to trick us. They're going to say, well, with the chip, you can get your food and get all this stuff. And that, once you take the chip, you're lost. You won't be able to go to heaven. And that's my main thing. And I just wish we could have talked to him. But I'm glad to talk to you, Jimmy. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever talked to you.
Well, Cornelius, you've gone down the chain, right? You've hit every host. Now you're at the bottom. You're with me,
No.
but you've done it. I've listened to you many times over the years, my friend, and thank you for calling in. And there you go. And let's not make it the last time.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy. God bless you. And remember, get the God, Guns, and Gold, and Bible, Bullets, and Beads, and get ready.
That's what I'm talking about, Cornelius. Now, you be safe out there in 2017. Thank you so much. All right. Let's go to, let's see. You know what? On hold for way, way, way too long. Lynn in Kansas City. You're up next.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Lynn.
How are you?
I am great, Lynn. How are you? That's the question.
Freezing. We have really slick streets here.
We're freezing here, too, as well. The forecast, don't laugh. It's getting down to 30 degrees tonight here in Los Angeles. And let me tell you something. For us, that's cold, and we're freaking out.
Well, that's true. I'm sure you are. I'd love for it to be 30 here, but it's about 7.
Well, it's all relative, right? So,
right.
So you're used to it. We're used to something else. So it might as well be 7 here, or at least we're acting like it.
I'm sure. I had called and talked to George probably about a month ago, and I don't remember the guest he had, but I'm RH negative. And I was just curious. I looked it up, and lo and behold, all of this stuff started coming up. about the reptilians, Atlantis, and all of this. And only 15% of the world's population is Rh negative.
I think that's right, yes.
It really is interesting. It's said in this, I guess people that are Rh negative, they don't even realize that when a baby is born with it, they go onto this government list. Now, I don't know if it's for donations, if they need it for emergency, or what the deal is. But there's a tie-in. There's really a long list of about 10 different things that people with Rh negative have in common. And you were talking about Germany a while ago, David.
Right.
The majority of people with Rh negative are in Europe, in the northern part of Africa.
Well, I've heard the same thing. Really quick, Lynn. Before we're going to hit a break here, and I want to comment. Okay, so did you have a question to go along with that?
Well, I just wondered if you all thought that there was any connection, because George and the man that he had on with him,
right?
They both found it very interesting. The IQ is higher. In fact, I had mine tested since then, and it was 115, which is not a genius, but it's not stupid either.
Right. I'm about 101, so you got a few on me. But
are you Rh negative by any
me? No, I'm average Joe, no matter what. But let me say this, Lynn, and I'm not trying to be cavalier here, but what I have found, I have done over 1,000 interviews, right? 1,000. Think about that for a second. And out of all of those interviews, anytime our blood types have come up, with some very special people or gifted people or people that are out of the ordinary. And that's why they're on the show, because they're talking about extraordinary circumstances, right? I would say, without saying 100%, but I would say in the very high 90s, Rh negative. And it's extraordinary to me. And I watch my listeners and email and Twitter and text and chat rooms, when these questions come up about blood type, Rh negative will start popping up, and then I'll hear the guest say, well, I'm Rh. And it blows my mind. So that tells me right there that there is something going on. I don't know necessarily what it is, because this is with contactees, experiencers, possibility Anunnaki bloodlines, American Indians, telepathy, near-death experiences. It's like all across the board. And I find that just amazing. And it's way beyond a numbers game here. There's something special about it. I can tell you, I'm not RH. I'm not RH, but I think my mom was, because she was out of her mind.
I've had a couple of dreams that have come true, really strange experiences.
Right.
And they said that is one of the things also that can happen.
Right.
It's really interesting. There's a lot of presidents that are Rh negative. George Bush was.
I've heard, yes. Let me ask you, Lynn, what do you think is going on? That's what's important here. Don't worry about me. What do you think is going on?
Oh, I definitely believe in UFOs, and for people here on Earth who don't believe it, that's just arrogance. Because the Bible, I'm a Christian, and the Bible said that God created heavens and the earth. When he said heavens, that could be other planets, other galaxies. I mean, why couldn't it be?
Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Lynn. And I'll tell you something else. We're going to head towards a break here, and we're right there. So let me just say, before I let you go, Happy New Year, and have a great 2017. Will you do that for me?
Well, you too, and I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, thank you too, Lynn. Thank you so much. Is this, the point that I want to make here is, the whole God invented, created heaven and earth. This is, I listened to a bunch of lectures over the weekend, and one of the lectures that I listened to was about the multiverse. Now, this is what gets crazy here. When you have a multiverse, we've got our universe, right? Okay, now, it was created somehow. Big Bang, don't know. Divine, don't know. Special, we just don't know. But it was created. But if we move into the multiverse side of things, Tom, look at me. Look at me right in my eyeballs when I say this. When we go into the multiverse situation, here's us. And then there's another one. And then, well, now, are we talking about different divine interventions, different creators, different special situations, or were the odds of all of this just happening organically and chemically, right, is astronomical? So that's what's fascinating. So, are we dealing with different smart things called God or whatever that if the multiverse is correct, and go with me on this, that means multiverses are infinite. Our universe is not infinite, it's finite. So if we have multiverses, then we have infinite numbers of multiverse, like bubbles in a machine. It's crazy, isn't it? Mind blown. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, sitting in for George Norrie. We'll be right back. Yeah, I guess the theme of the bumper music tonight was songs that I could play air piano to here in the studio, because I'm the baddest air pianist in the valley right now. If you enjoyed Coast to Coast tonight and Mr. Wilcock and what I'd like to do here, then please go and check out my show, which is Fade to Black. And all you have to do is click on my name right there at the Coast to Coast website. Simple enough. It'll take you right over to my site. And everything is there. Now, there's a few things that are cool that I would like to point out, and then we move on. First, we are live 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific time. Live, like the Now Live, right before George and the Coast start. So you end up getting like 7 hours of great talk radio every single night of the week. And then everything is free. That's the way we do it. Everything is free. No members, nothing. Just come and hang out with us. Third, just like Coast, my standards are very, very high. We only have the very best and brightest guest, period, every single night. And that's it. So if you come and hang out with us 4 nights a week, then you get our guest and George. Bam. That's it. You get smart. Smarter. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm going to wrap up with all of your phone calls next. Stay with us. Friday the 13th. Welcome back to Coast AM, filling in for George Norrie on a Friday the 13th. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this. We're late in the fourth quarter here, and I'm just going to get everybody in. So let's do it in order. Let's go to Blair in Sedona, Arizona. You're up next on Coast, Blair.
Happy New Year, Jimmy.
How are you?
I've been reading these Hilarion series books by Maurice Cook, a Toronto businessman who in the late 70s through early 80s wrote about 16, 17 books. And he basically, Hilarion is... how can I put this? He is sort of in theosophical writings is an entity in charge of detailed scientific and occult knowledge for man on this planet.
Okay.
Well, he talks about the great triangle of being, physical, mental, and emotional.
Okay.
And he says most galactic human races focus on the mental, logical, but our human life stream, he calls it, has volunteered to take on emotions, going through hate, greed, sorrow, because we are destined to demonstrate to the galaxy a self-generating love that our free will project out to all beings.
Okay, I'm going with you, Blair. Do you have a question, or where do you think all of this is leading? Actually,
well, I think it leads to, from an individual standpoint, the overall purpose of higher development of evolution and spirituality and understanding. But for humanity alone, it's basically a lesson that we're teaching ourselves And that's the purpose of life on this planet as a humanity, as a group. We teach ourselves and then we project out and bathe love upon everybody else. So if we look at it from those terms, what we're going through now in, politics, economics, ecological and stuff are only birth pains. As ladies know, before you give birth, you have labor pains.
Right. Well, do you, Blair, before we run out of time here, do you apply this philosophy to yourself in the way that you live in your lifestyle?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
For a decade, I worked at a church in Dallas, Texas. I was on staff. I put microphones on Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Eric Von Doniken, Whitley Strieber. And so I learned, it was a Unity Church of Dallas, by the way, and I learned to become my own minister. The Unity movement would talk about that. It's all within ourselves, and we realize the superpower we have bottled up within ourselves, Jimmy. All we need to do is allow it to be released, and love is the way to do it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Blair. And with that, thank you for the message, and absolutely do this and more in 2017. Will you do that for me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Blair. Be safe out there, too, as well. Let's go to Allison right here in Los Angeles, California. Allison, you're up next.
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Allison. How are you? That's what's important.
I'm well.
Fantastic.
I'm in relaxed mode, and I'm doing well.
You sound like you're in relaxed mode, but let's move on from that, Allison.
Yes.
So what's on your mind?
I want to ask you, I'm sure you and David and other friends, maybe at the party you had, discussed Donald Trump, and I want to ask you, what do you all feel the role that he's playing is, and how does he factor in?
Well, it has been discussed, yes, and at this table of intellectuals over at the House, nobody is discussed more than the Donald, and in a good way too. I don't want to say anything negative. Now, putting politics aside, Allison, check this out. I think that this is, in general terms, what us in the I want to say this right, in the UFO circles, in the conspiracy circles, in these friend circles that we're in, is this. Donald or any sitting elected president, when you go in and you start to get fed the real information, right, no matter what it is, but obviously the subject of ETs and alien contact and Area 51, all of this stuff is going to get presented to you. And so it is of our opinion that Donald being exposed to this material is not the kind of guy that would keep it quiet or keep anything quiet. Because if you tell him no, right, you can't speak about this to the American people, he's the kind of guy that's going to go, you're saying no to the wrong guy, right? I'm out of here, man. I'm going to go tweet this right now. Real Donald Trump, boom, aliens are here, right? And so I think he's too much of a rebel to keep certain things inside. So if somebody's going to speak about it, I think we may have an ally here. So that's I know it's a kind of the opposite way to look at things, but it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Mhm. Yeah. I'm kind of with you. I think he's a very interesting joker, kind of wild card kind of guy. So do you feel that he's in that actually another faction has taken over, like David is saying? Do you feel Trump represents yet another faction than, let's say, the Bush, Clinton?
Right. Again, in general terms,
yes.
Right? In general terms, not speaking about Trump directly, okay, just anybody, you are going to find out who is really the boss. That you're going to go into the Oval Office, you're going to sit down and that phone's going to ring, you're going to pick it up, and you're going to find out, you thought you were the leader of the free world, but you're going to find out very quickly that you are not. Now, the question is, has somebody like Donald been exposed to this? Does he know about it? Does he know that it's coming? I don't know. One thing that I find very interesting And I don't go into politics. I'm more into the conspiracy of politics. That's what intrigues me, and that's what I speak about. And so Donald was so anti-Russian hacking, for no, Russia didn't do it. And then at his press conference the other day, he said Russia did it. Now, where does that influence come from? Mm-hmm. Has the shadow government in the background, the ones that do the influence, spoken to him? What caused him to change his mind so quickly? I'm just saying that influence is there, and it doesn't matter who. Insert another name. It doesn't have to be Trump. The same things happen. It's amazing to see how the presidents change the day that they take office.
Yep.
So and we're about to see this here. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm very curious. I got my popcorn.
Right. Yeah, we all do. Yeah, no doubt. It is going to be a great show.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great show. And I hope that, and this is the thing, and I really, really, really mean this. I want the best for this country, and I want to support whoever is in office, whether I voted for them or not. That part, I've grown up and gone way past that part, right?
Yeah.
We need to all be Americans, and we need whoever the president is, white, black, green, red, yellow, fat, short, doesn't matter, red, blue, left, right, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We need to support whoever it is, and we need to be led, and we need to be proud, and they need to represent us as Americans. That's all that I want. That's it. I'm not against anybody. I'm against or for during the election cycle, but once that is over, we need to be Americans. And that's I know I'm red, white, and blue, but that's just the way that I look at it. So, Allison, with that,
yes,
great phone call.
Thank you.
Are you relaxed? Do you feel better?
Great
Okay.
answer.
Okay, you have a great, fun, awesome, and safe 2017. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, and you as well.
Thank you, Allison. That was a great phone call. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I love Fridays. Must be Friday the 13th. With that, let's see. Who's up next? Let's go to Frank in Alabama. Frank, you're up next on Coast.
I just downloaded your app. Very beautiful, beautiful. I mean, they say people that don't remember how much money you left them. They don't remember what you did. They remember how you make them feel. And let me tell you something. Between you, Tom, George Norrie, it's amazing. You make everybody feel like you're their best friend. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And you're doing what you're preaching. And I can't tell you. I'm sitting here. I'm amazed. You're excellent. You're excellent.
No, Frank, and I'll thank you for that, okay? But let me just say this. There is nothing better, nothing, than the Coast audience. It's the best, and it's a family. And we do the same thing over on my other show, too. And once you understand, both as an audience member, as a listener, and as a host, and the guests that we have on, that we are all in this mess together, man. You know what I mean? Yes. It's only us, Frank. It's you and me against the world. And I understand that, and so do you. So we're a family. There you go.
You're wonderful, and it ought to heal the world. And I called you because I heard the guy from Louisiana say about I'm a devout believer in what the Bible is, but also what you said. And I had an experience where I died. I actually called and spoke about it. I died, and I went 50 feet from the doors of heaven.
No way.
And yeah, man, and I saw the majesty of God. I saw it. And it's a thing that there was a guest George had on. I forgot. I bought the book. I actually spoke to him. He works out there in L.A., and actually I work out there quite a bit. And I was, he saw what I saw. And we might be from the same kind of world, but, in terms of work and all that.
Well, Frank, we're at the end of the show, but I have to ask you, man, I have to know.
Yeah,
what did you see?
It's not gates of heaven, it's doors of heaven.
Really?
And I always say there were mahogany doors. I figured the Italians, we got there and we did a renovation on it. But
well played.
It was all love, bro. It was all love. What you speak of.
Right.
And it's wonderful, and I mean it from my heart. You the way you make people feel, and it's like George does the same thing. And what kind of time? Listen, I'm in this business 50, probably as long, if not longer than you. I always say my first audition was on Broadway when I was 3, and that was 55 years ago.
Wow.
But
I want to say this, Frank. I'm going to say this for George. And Tommy, who's sitting in front of me, well, he's not. He's in another room behind the glass, glaring at me. But Tommy and Dan, as witnesses, George stood where I'm standing right now and said to me, I was standing next to him, and Tommy was here and Dan was here. And this is what George said to me. He looked at me in my eyeballs and said these words, Jimmy, I am a bright ray of sunshine. That's who I am, and that's how I live my life. And I said, that's it. That's what I accept. So what you are talking about here, Frank, that's exactly what goes on here. That is the philosophy, and there is no hidden agenda with Coast. And I'll say this also very publicly, that I book the guests that I want to book. Nobody tells me what to do. Everybody here is a team player, man. And George fully supports all of the fill-in and guest hosts that are here, and all of the producers and everything. It is just a family. So that vibe that you get is real. It's not fake. I'm not making it up. Tommy brought me 2 $1 tacos today. How cool of a guy is Tommy? That's because it's a family. Hey, Frank, I want you to have a great, safe rest of your 2017, my friend. Thank you so much.
Good job.
You got it. All right. How much time do I have, Dan? Can I yank in one more? All right. Let's go to Barry in Rock Hills, South Carolina, because I've never spoken to somebody from Rock Hills, South Carolina. Barry, welcome to Coast.
Jimmy, you're just like Tommy Danheiser. He said, "Where in the world is Rock Hill, South Carolina?"
Well, okay. You've got a couple. You got about a minute, Barry. Where is Rock Hill, South Carolina?
It's 30 minutes from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I know you've heard of Charlotte.
Of course. So not that far from Greenville.
That's exactly right. And, I'm only an hour from Greenville, South Carolina. Anyway, let me tell you real quick. I know we got in a hurry. This is going to go down, and I just told Tommy a while ago, it's one of the greatest coast-to-coast shows ever, Jimmy. And that David Wilcock, I'm not surprised his IQ is off the charts. That guy is so smart, and I can't wait. I want to live just a few more years to see what happens with this Australia thing. I mean, the South, Antarctica.
Yeah, let me tell you something. You should see the size of the pillow that David Wilcock has to sleep on, because he's got a big old brain.
He's got a head full of brains.
He does, man. I'm telling you. I know him really well. You know what I forgot to do tonight? You know what? I'm going to do this tomorrow night. I've got some crazy pictures of David and I from New Year's Eve. And I told David I was going to post them on Twitter during the show tonight. I just spaced it. So you know what? Tomorrow night, Barry, don't miss the show. And I promise I'll post some pictures, and you'll see that my head is small. David it's full of brain. He's a smart guy.
Wait to see it, no kidding. But listen, right quick, don't you use the sign off your shows with Gobekli Tepe?
I sure do. I do it after Coast too.
Well, I tell you what, I know what you're talking about. Isn't it an island with 12,000-year-old civilization?
That's right.
To Turkey in the Mediterranean.
Yep. It's no joke, man. Gobekli Tepe's a game changer. And with that, hey, Barry, I'll see you tomorrow night on the show, my friend.
Okay, buddy, and you go tomorrow night. Mention Gobekli Tepe if I don't get through, and tell me what you know about it.
Well, if you listen over the next 30 seconds, you're going to hear me say Gobekli Tepe for the 4th time in 60 seconds. So stay with us, Barry, and have a great, safe 2017. All right, do that for me.
You got it, Jimmy. Thanks a lot, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. What a great show tonight. I just got to thank everybody. I've got to thank David Wilcock. all of the callers. Friday the 13th, Friday open lines. It doesn't get better than that. Thank you to Dan. Thank you to Tommy, Lisa, Stephanie, Lex, George, everybody here at Coast to Coast, the entire team. Tomorrow night, my guest, Damon T.